All right, everyone, welcome back. So part one was the melt where I acquired the ingot. And in this video, part two, we'll be forging this ingot into a flat bar and then to a blade, and I'll be revealing the pattern. If it's what I expect or what I hope to expect, I'll make it into a blade and put a handle on it. If it's not what I want, then it's gonna hang on the wall of, I don't wanna call it the wall of shame, but the wall of progress. We'll call it the wall of progress. But anyways, so that's what's gonna happen in this video, hopefully. So before we put this in the forge or bring it to temperature, we need to roast it. And that's the next process. And that's basically, bringing it to a high temperature, which will be 2,000 degrees for 2 hours. And what that does is it changes the initial structure of this ingot, because as the ingot is, it's very brittle. It's crystalline. So if we were to take this right now as is and put it in the forge, bring it to temperature and start forging, the probability of failure is very high. That's why roasting is very important. You don't want to just take this out of the crucible and go forge. It's not a good idea. So 2,000 degrees for 2 hours, and then it comes directly out of the kiln and right into the forge. So the next clip of this will be on the press. And another important thing is the orientation of the ingot. So the top of the ingot is the crappy material. So you don't want that where your edge is going to be of your blade. Or really the face. It's best to have it on the spine or the very end. And it's kind of tricky forging these at the end of the bar on the press. I'm sure it can be done, but because the only flat surface I have is the top of the ingot. So it'll be forged like this with the press, pressing on it here, because I want to consolidate this into like a biscuit shape. And then from there, I can put this as the spine. And obviously if you're going to make a dagger, you don't have that choice. Like, this is going to have to be on the face of the bar. So, and another reason, you kind of want to, press it down into a biscuit is because if there's any, tiny porous holes in the ingot, you want to close those up as fast as possible in the very beginning processes, because there is a chance that graphite can precipitate in those areas, and that's bad. You don't want graphite in there. So we want to close those pores up. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to make the top of the ingot the spine of the blade, and yeah, so let's get this thing roasted, and then we'll go to forging it, so stay tuned.
All right, so straight from the kiln into the press, and it is worth mentioning that I'm forging very gentle on the first couple heats and work my way up to heavier forging.
decent bar. This is why you got to pay attention to what you're doing with this stuff, because I got it a little too hot and I got a little crack right there. But that's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and cut it out and keep going, so stay tuned.
All right, so as I mentioned, you gotta pay attention to what you're doing with this stuff. It's really easy to overheat it. You also need to pay attention to ingot orientation and trying to film and pay attention to what I'm doing. Kind of hard for me to do, but I was fighting cracking a lot, forging the tip in on this blade because I was overheating it. And I'll insert a picture right here of some of the cracking I was dealing with. But I overcame it. And as I saw cracks, I just cut them out and kept going. Started forging at a cooler temperature. And another thing is you don't want to forge this stuff too cold. And you can really feel the material stiffen up on you. And that's a sign that your carbide content is rising. And there's a greater chance of fracturing at that point. So you really got to keep it at a right temperature when you're forging.
I kept forging. I managed to get it into a tip. We're gonna keep going, but I think I was overheating it. I think that's why. So we're just gonna keep going. You know, I'm gonna separate the blade from the handle, and then we'll start forging in the bevels. So yeah, looks like it's surviving. So stay tuned.
So another thing worth mentioning is Wootz benefits from forging. It's basically where the pattern comes to life. Typically the pattern improves with forging cycles, and forging your bevels will help align those dendritic sheets with the surface. So if you're somebody that likes to forge your blades to shape like I do, this is some really awesome material to work with.
so here's the blade. I think it came out pretty nice. I'll do some profiling on it. I definitely wanted a larger blade, but I was really overheating this thing. From ingot to bar went great, and as soon as I started forging the blade out of the bar, that's when I started overheating it, and I was getting a lot of cracking. So I overcame that, and managed to get a blade, because I almost thought I wasn't going to have a blade for this video. But all in all, I'm happy with it. That's why it's real important you pay attention to what you're doing when you're forging this stuff, because you know it's really easy to screw it up. It's not like your average blade steel. You know, this stuff is grouchy, and you know you want to forge it above ACM, and you don't really have a big window above that temperature to where the steel kind of gets not in a liquid state, but like what I've heard it referred to as the slushy zone. So, which is like a 400-degree window there. So it's really easy to overheat it, and it's not good for the pattern to forge it. You know, when it's too hot, it makes the it makes your cementite very coarse. So that's not good for it. But anyways, yeah, managed to get a blade. So I'm gonna go ahead and profile this. Grind it, hand sand it, and then we'll etch it and we'll see what it looks like. So stay tuned.
All right, so I got the blade profiled, and I'm just rough grinding in the bevels, prepping for heat treat. I did 4 normalization cycles off camera, starting at 1540 and working my way down in temperature to 1425. And I quenched the blade at 1425, which is important because you want to austenize at the lowest temperature possible. If you quench too hot or soak the blade too long, you can put enough carbon in solution and basically erase the pattern.
All right, well, the quench went great, as I expected. The blade hardened up nicely. So, yeah, happy with that. And this is a 65 Rockwell hardness file. So, and I really try to dig into my blades. When I'm testing them for hardness, I don't just skate across like that. I really try to dig that file in there. So very happy with this, and I'm gonna go ahead and throw it in the oven, temper it, and then I'll finish grind it and then hand sand and then get into the etch. I don't think I'm gonna film the finish grinding or hand sanding. That's pretty much pretty straightforward, pretty boring. But we will talk about etching this. So stay tuned. All right, so the blade's ready to be etched. I brought it up to 800 grit. Going higher I don't think is beneficial, but again, I haven't done enough of these to really know yet. And I think it's important to talk about etching, because etching Wootz is not like etching your modern Damascus. But etching Wootz can probably be the most tricky part of the whole process. And you go through all this work and polish up your blade, and then you etch it and it doesn't pop like you want it to, but that's just how it goes. I've already etched this blade. I did a test etch at 120 grit, so I know what to expect. And there's some things that happened, and I'll talk about why they happened. But for now, I just want to talk about what I'm going to use to etch. And it's not ferric chloride. I'm not having very much luck using ferric. I don't like how it comes out. It's really weak, and from what I understand, it doesn't really etch the cementite. It doesn't bring it out, and that's why I'm going to be using nitol, which is nitric acid and alcohol. This is actually a really strong acid, so it's something you want to store properly. It's not something you really want to breathe the fumes in, so I would have a mask on, have it in a well ventilated area. It should be like in a fume hood, but that's what I'm going to be using. It's just a quick etch. It's probably 10-15 seconds at most is all you need. It's really quick, works really well. There's also oxalic acid, which is a wood bleach, and you can use that too. That's what Peter Burt uses in You know, he's got great results with it. And you can buy that stuff at like any hardware store, but you need to dissolve some steel wool in it and add a little alcohol, which I have a batch sitting over here that's, I'm still dissolving the wool in it, but I've done some test etches with it too, and I don't really like it. I don't know if it's strong enough yet because it's still dissolving wool at the moment. So in the future, I'll be testing that stuff out. But and then after etch it, I'm going to clean it, and then we're going to do a coffee etch too. So stay tuned. All right, folks, so I pretty much had bad luck ever since I started etching this blade. I've had an extremely difficult time trying to get a good etch on it, and that's due to the fact that it auto-homoned on me. And if you notice in the last clip, you can clearly see it. And that's because Wootz is a shallow hardening steel. This material happens to be very low in manganese. And the higher the manganese content in your steel, that's going to increase hardenability. The fact that Wootz is so high in carbon, that actually lowers your hardenability. But you can still get an achievable hardness of 65, 66 Rockwell, which I know this blade achieved that. But trying to etch between the two regions and get a good etch, man, I fought it, and in that clip, that was really the best etch I got. And, you had to have oil on it to really pick it up on camera. And just like any of my Damascus blades, I always oil with mineral oil, and then I just let it kind of sit there overnight, or rub it off, or sometimes I'll put a wax paste on it or something like that. But yeah, it kind of made a film on it. The next day when I went to inspect the blade, I noticed that there was a film on it now, and you couldn't see the pattern very well. So I cleaned it up and went through some more etching cycles, and I thought at that point that it would probably be beneficial to try other etching avenues. Try the oxalic, try the ferric, because even though I knew that might, throw things off or ruin my polish, because I really didn't want to, end up, sanding back down in a lower grit, basically hand sanding over again. I just didn't really want to do that, but I figured it's beneficial for me to, kind of know what works. So I didn't have any luck with the oxalic, and I think that's because that batch isn't ready yet. It's still dissolving some wool, so maybe it's not strong enough yet. Ferric's just ferric doesn't show the structure like Nidal does. And I actually took some pictures of what ferric looked like, and I'll insert those right now. So yeah, that's what the ferric does. It doesn't really make it pop, doesn't really etch the cementite. I think Nidal is really the way to go. But the main problem I was having was the edge would etch really nice and looked really good. It had a great pattern on it, and but the area above that wouldn't show anything. So I'd have to leave it in there a little longer to get, above the edge to come out. But then it would, build up so much oxide on the edge that it was a pain, man. And, I just, like I said, I tried different things and I didn't really have great results. So I just kind of stopped there, threw a handle on it, and you know, it's right here. But you know, you can't really see the pattern right now. And like I said, I didn't want to take the time to hand sand and re-etch it. I'm ready to move on to the next blade. I've learned a lot from this one. And also, when I glue my scales on, I always leave my blade up like that. Well, in the middle of the night, it decided to tip over. Lovely. So I got a bunch of epoxy right there. So like I said, I've just been having, yeah, trouble ever since I etched it. But I am glad I got a video clip of that structure on there. But it's really a really tiny structure, which is really weird. I figured it would be a lot, you know, larger and easier to see, but this one's really hard to see, but there's a lot of movement at the edge. Like I said, this was all for learning purposes, and you know, I'm basically just documenting my, you know, beginning adventure in making Wootz or crucible steel. So I've got a lot to learn, but this has been a blast. I'm having fun doing it. I finally found something that's going to take me a long time to get good at, you know, something that I can work towards, and you know, like little personal projects, because this stuff's really interesting. And I do have a spectrometer analysis, so I'll insert that now and we'll talk about that.
So here's the analysis. And first off, I just want to say I know nothing about using spectrometers, but I have been told that when you're testing Wootz, it should be on the cast iron setting, which may be why the carbon content is thrown off. The very top row is the blade, and the carbon content is not right. At 0.5%, there's not enough carbide in the steel to have a pattern, and it wouldn't have even hardened up at the temperature I quenched at, because you wouldn't have put enough carbon in solution. So something's not right there. Maybe they made a typo, but it should be 1.5%. But anyways, you can see that the manganese content is low, you know, like I mentioned. And it's kind of interesting, the vanadium content, which I believe is right in the lines of historical Wootz. So that's kind of cool to see, and I'm wondering if that's coming from the sorrel, but I don't know. The bottom line is a ingot that was 1018 and graphite powder. And like I mentioned, you know, you can lose some of your graphite powder in the slag. So that might be why the carbon content is so low in that ingot. And as you can see, using the 1018, the manganese content is high. But again, over here, it shows we have vanadium. So really interesting. You know, it's good to have this kind of information so you can make adjustments. But yeah, kind of cool.
All right, so the brass rod test. We want the edge to bend, to deflect, but come back. We don't want it to chip out. So I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's definitely bending and going back. I've already done this a few times off camera, but this is the best rod I have at the moment. All right, so now a board chop. Still shaves very well. All right, most important test, can it cut cardboard? That's really fun. All right, so overall I'm happy with the heat treat on the blade. I don't know if I mentioned or not, but I did temper at 375 for 2 cycles, 2 hours each. You know, I thought it would be beneficial to add some footage of testing the blade. You know, you probably wouldn't tell a difference between this and say 1095. But that's just speculation because I haven't used this steel enough to know that. But anyways, you know, I wish the etch went better, but you know, it is what it is, and I'll take what I learned this time and use it to the next blade. So, but I think this is awesome because I made this steel, so it's really, you know, pure and organic. You know, you can't go buy this, so that's really cool to me. But anyways, you know, I hope this video was beneficial to anybody who may want to decide to make crucible steel. You know, I hope it was informative. There may have been some things I may have not explained very well, but you know, I don't really want to get really into detail. I'll let the experts do that because I'm still in the beginning stages of this stuff. I got a long ways to go before I'll you know, have a good grasp on it. But I will be doing more videos of making these blades, but I'm not going to go into detail or anything. It's just going to be straight on through, you know, melting to forging, and then, you know, seeing what pattern we got. So you can look forward to that. But other than that, you guys have a good day, and until next time.